The State of the Nation address tomorrow also allows President Cyril Ramaphosa to outline a number of his own programs. Foreign policy, one of the key instruments used by presidents to champion their own country's interests, sometimes for both here at home and further afield. A lot has happened, of course, in connection to South Africa's involvement with what's taking place beyond our borders, including the SANDF's deployment in Eastern DRC, where 14 soldiers have died. Tensions also with the Trump administration simmering in the days gone by. Let's distill all of this for you. Bring in SABC News reporter Khayelihle Khumalo with us in our studios here in Auckland Park. And I'm going to repeat it. What a time for foreign policy, geopolitics, or geopolitical tensions, and our connections here in South Africa. Perhaps we should begin with the big developments on the continent. The minister yesterday facing quite a grilling from MPs about the rationale of having our soldiers in the eastern parts of the DRC and whether or not, in fact, they were properly briefed about their task there. It seems impossible for me, at least, for the president to ignore that.
Well, certainly, and I mean, the MPs, they were pulling no punches yesterday. A very critical moment for the Commander-in-Chief, for the President really to talk about the presence of South African troops in the DRC, talk about the issue that, I mean, it dates back to Nelson Mandela's presidency. South Africa has been involved in over 20 missions, you know, just in terms of peacekeeping in the continent, outside, especially because this is a very burning issue, and also not just about South Africa, but also involving the SADC region, but also now spilling over to East Africa, given the fact that the DRC enjoys a dual membership within SADC and also East African community, but also for the president really to talk about this very important issue in terms of South Africa's foreign policy. It's very patently clear that the issue of peaceful resolution of conflict is very key. So that's why you have the South African troops there. Unfortunately, some died there, but also the president saying that we need to bow our heads and really just pay tribute to these gallant fighters who are still in the DRC. The
DA actually calling for there to be no military parade at the State of the Nation address tomorrow in honor of these fallen soldiers. We've got news from Vincent Magwinya this morning that the president will be attending that joint meeting of SADC and the EAC in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. It's a high-stakes meeting, and in fact, many people are hoping this is where the solution will come from.
Well, very much so, and especially because with Tanzania, this is the head of the troika of SADC for defense, security and politics. So quite a very big responsibility, especially when you look at the recent meetings of SADC and also East African community. They all emphasize very one issue around the ceasefire, around the safe passage of the injured soldiers, including those who passed away. So I do understand it's going to be very crunch time, especially because the main leaders here, the leader of the DRC, President Tshisekedi, and also Rwandan President Paul Kagame will attend the session. As you remember, the last session, the East African community meeting, President Tshisekedi did not attend, but also still going on with the whole war talk and also the whole issue of saying Rwanda is so much involved in the DRC. Obviously, Kigali really just not really confirming those allegations. Really a lot of blood lines in this instance.
Absolutely. You make reference to Kigali's comments. Kagame essentially saying he doesn't know if his troops are in the DRC in an interview he made with an international broadcasting channel. But we'll see what the president says about that when he addresses the nation tomorrow. Another issue, of course, is around South Africa's relations with the United States, given the comments made by Trump, in some ways enforced by Elon Musk on social media. It's another issue that I imagine the president won't be able to sidestep tomorrow.
Well, very much so, and especially because, as you know, that South Africa is chairing the G20. The US is one of the members. In fact, right after South Africa in 2026, the US will have to take over from South Africa. So we expect a very seamless transition. So a lot of engagement must happen between Washington, D.C. and South Africa. And I'm sure the president really will clarify around the Expropriation Act, because this is a constitutional democracy. There won't be land grab willy-nilly where a private property is taken away. So it's going to be a very important opportunity for the president to allay fears, you know, the misunderstandings, really clearing these cobwebs, but also talk about the importance of South Africa-US relations when you talk about AGOA, the trade preferential agreement, benefiting a number of countries in sub-Saharan Africa, including South Africa, of course.
Yeah, this State of the Nation address also comes after a ceasefire finally was agreed to in Gaza, but will also come very soon after President Trump said that America will be taking over the besieged Strip, suggesting that Palestinians won't be able to stay there.
Terribly bizarre, especially because, I mean, all of this is terribly in violation of international law. It's an illegal annexation, so nobody would really expect a sovereign state to go already to a place that has really seen so much suffering, so much subjugation. But also, I'm sure the president will update the nation how far is that International Court of Justice case, because obviously we're still waiting for quite a very important judgment. I mean, these things, they tend to take time, but also most importantly, very important development around the ceasefire, albeit with the frequent raids in West Bank, a lot of issues really happening, really just putting this particular ceasefire in a very precarious position.
Absolutely. We also know there's a AU summit that's likely to take place sometime later on. On the list of priorities, one has to wonder how much the president can squeeze in his zone tomorrow night.
Well, very much so, and especially because when you look at Mr. Magwenya's briefing, confirming that the president will go there, obviously the issue of the DRC is going to feature prominently for the AU Peace and Security Council. Will probably brief the heads of states. They had a virtual meeting, again calling for cessation of hostilities, calling for the warring factions really to understand the issue of the suffering of the people of eastern parts of Congo. I mean, this is a long-standing conflict. You have so many people who are internally displaced, so many just refugee camps as well have been affected, but it's also just a humanitarian catastrophe where the vulnerable, the women, the children, so many people really just displaced, but also pointing to the issue that Africa will have to do more in terms of emphasizing the importance of peace, but also the situation in South Sudan as well. Quite an important issue, Ayanda.